what should the actual intentions for reading theory be instead of those?
What should they be? So not only will it not satisfy you, it actually might make you more miserable. And I wanted to touch on that. That's not a bad thing.
Baby, come clapping on this. Clapping on this. Clapping on this.
Hey, what's up? So, I've seen in these leftist online spaces a lot of people telling each other, you just need to read more theory. Read more theory. Here's a list of theory you need to read. And I've seen a lot of people in these online conversations and in my comments feeling so bad about themselves because of how much theory they haven't read. So, we have Theory Pleeb, fellow leftist YouTuber, here to talk about theory, what the actual intentions should be for reading theory. And you just also recently got your master's in critical theory. So there we go.
So I'm about as much as an expert as you're ever going to find on this topic. No.
I know you've at least read a lot more theory than what a lot of people I see online telling each other, you need to read more theory, you need to read more theory. And so, first of all, your name on YouTube is Theory Pleeb. So, explain to the people what Theory Pleeb means. What's the theory part? What's the plebe part? How does it all fit together?
Right. So, first of all, thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
This is an honor. It's a really cool opportunity to be able to actually meet you in person because I'm a big fan of everything you're doing. So, I mean, I'm a plebe in the sense that I, grew up in rural America and I've spent a lot of time working before I went to college. In fact, I didn't really see the value of college when I was working. And I had always had kind of a suspicion of intellectual types, of people who get too lost in their ideas, or books for that matter. And I really, really have an axe to grind against taking things on authority, taking things just, oh, well, so-and-so said something, so therefore that's the thing. That's an argument. It's like, that's not an argument. You're just telling me what somebody else said. You're not giving me reasons for why they said what they're saying. Mm-hmm. And, we both kind of have that evangelical background where there was definitely a time when you're being force-fed what they considered to be was the most right take. And you basically are told, well, these are the ideals we espouse. This is the dogmas that we hold. And you can either just get on board with that, or you can learn apologetics, which is to say, study basically, oh, well, if this person says this, then you would say that back. And if this person says this, then you would say that back, which is not the kind of ideal I have for philosophical inquiry, where you're thinking through dilemmas and crises and contradictions, and trying to come into a more free relation with them, right? Because I see the ego, and we'll just use that term for now, but the ego is something that ideologies like latch onto, or maybe the ego latches onto ideologies as a way of being, well, we desire to be morally and intellectually superior to other people.
Yeah. Right.
Like, and then some people might say, well, I don't. And it's like, maybe you don't. Maybe you just want to feel morally or intellectually okay. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be better than other people, but you want to feel like, well, I'm not stupid, and I'm not, evil. So you want to feel morally or intellectually okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. But one of the things that I like about critical theory and critical thinking both is that they're able to, in their own ways, take on the cheap excuses we buy into for allowing ourselves to feel morally or intellectually superior to other people.
Yeah.
Because whenever, it doesn't matter what your ideology is, if it's Marxism, if it's Christianity, or if it's just consumerism, we want to know that we're right. And at the end of the day, when other people are turning around and saying, well, you just need to read what I've read, then you would know.
Yeah.
Then you would agree with me.
Yeah.
It's like, actually, you're just some plebeian who needs to read what I've read. And then after you've done so, then you'll be on my level, which is far superior to yours.
Yeah.
And people resent that. And I don't blame people for resenting that because I've always resented it too.
Yeah.
And so it's somewhat ironic that here I got into theory. But, I felt really insecure when I went to college. And I was, I wanted to care about the world. I wanted to change the world. I wanted to make a positive contribution. And so I thought, well, I'll look into political science and political philosophy. I have friends who had studied these things and had told me that it was a worthwhile endeavor. And I was like suspicious. I'd argued with friends who had studied these things and said, you're just espousing the ideas of others. Why don't you have your own ideas? It took about half of a semester for me to go, wow, I've not had an original idea beyond Plato 2,500 years ago.
Yeah.
Speaking of Ecclesiastes, which we haven't gotten to yet.
We're going to get to that.
But we haven't gotten to it. But, one of the sentiments in there is there's nothing new under the sun. And you kind of have this kind of realization when you're reading someone like that. You're like, wow, it's like somewhere along the way I had this profound breakthrough. Turns out it was actually a super watered down idea of something that Plato already said.
Yeah.
And I thought that was me. I thought I was so genius,
Right. And I appreciate you doing the work to make this more accessible to people, because it's very overwhelming, I know, for a lot of people. And there can be a lot of shame for people who feel like, it's like, I wish I was smarter. I wish I was smarter. I wish I knew more. I wish I've read more. Just so badly wishing they could just download books into their brain so they could just get it over with. And as I was thinking about what to talk about in this video and thinking about people who say to each other, just read more theory, just read more theory, I was reminded of this passage in Ecclesiastes, which is my favorite book of the Bible, where it begins, and theories too. The writer here goes on to say about how I tried this and it was meaningless. I tried that and then realized it was meaningless. Try to find satisfaction and pleasure, realized it was meaningless. Try to find satisfaction in building things, realized it was meaningless. Try to find satisfaction eventually in wisdom. I want to read this too. I devoted myself to study and to explore by wisdom all that is done under heaven. What a heavy burden God has laid on men. I have seen all things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind. What is twisted cannot be straightened. What is lacking cannot be counted. I thought to myself, look, I've grown and increased in wisdom more than anyone who was ruled over Jerusalem before me. I have experienced much of wisdom and knowledge. Then I applied myself to the understanding of wisdom and also of madness and folly. But I learned that this too is a chasing after the wind. And so I love Ecclesiastes also because it's a type of wisdom after wisdom where you do everything that the world told you to do in order to be happy and you still got screwed over. You realize a lot of this stuff you try to do didn't ultimately satisfy you. You were left feeling like, well, now what? I thought this feeling of satisfaction would come and it hasn't, no matter how much I do. So it seems like no matter how much theory you read, you will not reach ultimate satisfaction and happiness, and you won't get to a place of 100% self-confidence to finally speak up. And so, after all the theory that you've read thus far, have you reached ultimate satisfaction?
Yes! I'm so happy! This is the best life! And for only $19.99, you can also be the most woke person in the room. Just subscribe to my Patreon. I'm just kidding. So
which should the actual intentions for reading theory be instead of those?
What should they be? Yeah, that's a... I just want to touch on, not only will it not satisfy you, it actually might make you more miserable. And I wanted to touch on that that's not a bad thing. And you don't realize that this is all part of a bigger dialogue between a lot of people who are always in the process of destabilizing their own certainty in regards to all sorts of things. And so for me, you ask, what is the I guess, the positive goal of theory? So first of all, let's just say that you want to change the world and you want to have a positive impact on the world. If you want to change the world, you have to assume a theory of social change. I can't think about social change without bringing those perspectives in, but the more complex the world is and the more alienated we are from all sorts of things, from community, from our own labor, from our culture, or from even having a culture, like the more alienated you are from all of these different things, and the more and the less you are able to actually understand how this highly technological world is functioning, the more we feel just powerless and kind of cast about by the dictates of this huge society. And sometimes theory can help you understand a little bit better how it's all fitting together, but other times it can make you feel even less empowered. And so I find that theory is a really useful way of understanding where someone's coming from, but it doesn't really tell you what to do. And this is the crisis of theory and its translation into praxis.
Yeah.
Right. Just because you subscribe to intersectional theory doesn't mean you subscribe to every single way that any given person online might say they're doing something intersectionally. Right. Because that's praxis. What they're doing, they're trying to practice intersectionality. Well, is it a good translation of the ideas itself? And who am I to speak to it? And I don't know. But when I say that it's a good way for understanding where other people are coming from, the reason I say this is because every theorist sort of becomes an archetype for a position that one can take. If I want to understand Marx, I really should go to Marx. Like if I have the privilege of the time, energy, and attention to actually go to Marx, I should go to Marx, not to the Marxists, because it's kind of like the Bible. Yeah, it's like if I really want to understand, I should. Yeah, of course, I should talk to you. I should try to understand how you're reading the book, but I also at the same time, to truly have that encounter and to get to the point where you really can steelman the opposition actually requires that engagement. Yeah.
And I also wanted to bring up the next verse in that passage in Ecclesiastes says, "For with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief." And I think there's a lot of people out there who have also begun to read a lot of theory, but now they are so sad. And because they're now realizing the actual problems of the world, they're no longer are able to be blissfully ignorant. They can no longer be able to unsee what they've already seen. And everyone around them doesn't see it, which makes you even more sad and lonely. So what would you say to someone like that who's in a bad state right now because the more knowledge they've got has given them more grief?
First, I'd say I identify with that. I feel where you're coming from. And, there's different kinds of responses to crises or dilemmas or suffering that are unhelpful. And one of them might be telling you it's actually good for you. But that's what I'll say anyway, is that like when it comes to a crisis of belief or a crisis that you're living through because your time engaging theory has made it harder to go back into the cave, harder to go back and hang out with the people who didn't go down those rabbit trails of thought with you. Maybe you feel more isolated or alienated, or like maybe the whole approach that you thought was the right approach is wrong. And now you've got comrades in the struggle who like, I don't know that I agree with everything anymore. Like that sucks. But at the same time, that's the kind of crisis that if we do not embrace and live out and tease out to its fullest, then we are undermined by totalitarian certainty anyway, in the first place. We become so we can become so sure of ourselves. And that's where you get like this intellectual or moral superiority flexing that people are doing, where they've got like, they've got it all figured out. And, not having everything all figured out is not bad. It makes it harder to like tweet sometimes. Yeah. But it's not bad. And that's the kind of crisis that will make you I would hope make you a more valuable addition to any conversation regarding the cause that you care about. Yeah.
I relate with that as well, coming out of the evangelical world and then actually studying a lot. I've heard someone say before that you cannot go to seminary and come out an evangelical still. unless you're choosing to just lie in order to avoid problems. And so many people go through that. They actually study, realize that they can no longer go on the way that they were, and there's a crisis that comes about. But there's good types of crises because it leads to ultimate growth. And I've experienced my own self plenty of periods of my life where I did feel so lonely because of what I had learned. And by continuing on that path, I think you eventually can find others who are also on similar journeys and can help a bit with the loneliness, but then also in the long run, the freedom of being fully aware of problems and no longer being blissfully ignorant, I think is so much better in the long run. So thank you so much for being on this channel. Subscribe to Theory Pleeb. I love their videos. They got a lot of really awesome ones.
Thank you for watching, everybody. This was just a short clip from a much longer interview I did with Theory Pleeb. You can watch the entire hour-and-a-half long interview on my Patreon right now. Go and become a patron, patreon.com/Damon Garcia, and watch the whole thing. I'm going to post 2 more clips this week, so you can also enjoy some free clips from this amazing interview as well. So keep an eye out for the next coming clips and go and become a patron. Also, of course, go follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/whoisdamon, where we'll be streaming every Tuesday and every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I just want to end this by thanking my amazing patrons: Karen in Colorado, Ranger Jenny, Refined Your Scene, James Finlay, New Transcendentalist, Kristen Mouse, Rob Hutton, Jack, Jacob McCarthy, Theory Pleeb, Michael Adato, Frank Morales, and Vema Pasa. Thank you all, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.